Okay, we are coming back into session. For those of you that weren't here at 5 o'clock, we convened the meeting and went into executive session, and we are now reconvening. The purpose of our executive session was legal and personnel, and we have legal and bargaining, and we have no action to report out. So we're going now to continue with the agenda. Yeah. Okay, we're going to start with the roll call, and this time I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. So we'll start at this end.
Claire Wilson.
Jeffrey McAnalloy.
Danny Peterson.
Mr. Rott.
Rob New.
And I'm Carol Gregory. We'll now have the presentation of the colors by the Todd Beamer High School JROTC. Please stand.
Forward. Colors. Forward. March. Color. Hold. Order. Colors. Left. Face. Carry. Colors. Breathe and colors. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry. Colors. Order. Colors. Right. Face. Forward. Colors. Forward. March.
Thank you. We now need a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Secretary, I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of May 27th as submitted with 2 changes. I'd like to add number 16 under assurance of organizational performance for the discussion of the questions for the candidates for the vacant board position, and number 17 for calendar adjustment.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We're now moving to the approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of May 27th, 2014 as submitted.
Been moved. Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are now going to our recognition time, and this is one of those exciting, sad times. We will be recognizing our current superintendent, well, I guess our former superintendent, kind of current, kind of former. He's here until the 30th, and Sally McLean is also serving in that role, so we got 2. And I would like to ask that Rob, I know, has some comments he would like to make, so I'd like to ask him to do that, after which we have some comments to make.
Thank you, Madam President, for the last time in my tenure. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board and the audience leadership team tonight. I wrote a speech, but I'm not going to read it. Charlie, that might be the first time in 4 years that you and I agree. But I just want to start off by thanking the Board of Education. The 5 that hired me are no longer here, but I really appreciate the working with the 4 of you in the last couple of months as we've begun the process of this transition. I think this has been a very important time. I applaud the board in their decision to hire Sally McLean as the interim superintendent. Sally, I think that not only I know you'll do a great job, but I think you might find that it fits a little bit better than you think, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if you don't stay on as a permanent superintendent. You are more than prepared for this challenge, and I can't think of a better choice that this board could have made that the district needs at this time. So I applaud you and I congratulate you. I did that so I would get applause during my speech. But I also want to thank the members of the leadership team. Words cannot express my gratitude to you for the time that we spent over the last 4 years. We went through some challenging moments. We never lost our sense of humor. We never lost our sense of purpose. And it has been a pleasure to serve with you. I have great respect for each of you individually, the work that you've done. I could list the accolades. I was going to. I'm not going to tonight. Instead, I'm just going to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the 4 years that you've given me, the 4 years that you've given the Board of Education, and the years that you've given this school district. And I wish you nothing but the best and continued success. I know that the position that you're in will propel you to great heights, and the students in this community will benefit from your leadership and your work. And I thank you for the last 4 years that you've given me. And to the board, again, the opportunity to serve here in Federal Way has been an outstanding opportunity, an excellent opportunity. Although we went through some challenges and some difficult times, I'm intensely proud of the work, and I'm proud of the position that this district is in. And I know that you 4 coming together as you have in the last couple of months to make the decision to hire Sally, you're about to appoint your 5th member, and I will be looking on with great anticipation for the work that's going to come. And I just want to sincerely thank all 4 of you and the 5 who preceded you for the opportunity to serve here in Federal Way. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob was unwilling to speak to the accolades, and I know that this part of our meeting is difficult for him. He'd like to go hide, but we aren't going to let that happen. And so we would like to, with the help of the communications department, show you what we feel are those powerful things that have happened during this last 4 years. The first thing was, is this just going to go quickly?
I can't change it at this point. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Boom. It will be on our website.
Can you start it again?
I can.
What we're going to do here is look at a variety of issues and successes that this district has had. And I think we often underestimate our successes and only worry about the future and the past. And while this is going to go quickly, I hope you'll take the time to take a look at it and then look at our website in order to be able to really understand the power of the last 4 years. Thank you. As you can see by the length of that, some pretty amazing things have happened here. And we are a community that demands a lot. And often we don't like to be challenged. And we brought in a leader who challenged us and a board who had set some pretty high expectations for these past 4 years. And I think we're beginning to feel and see the results of those. One of those slides talks about the 2014 graduation rates and how improved those are going to be. That isn't an accident. That's a building process. And that academic acceleration work that Superintendent New led has been very, very powerful, and we're really beginning to reap the benefits of that. We've been lucky to have the opportunity of a community that is going to build a new high school that is going to be phenomenal. And it's going to be a high school that really talks to the times that we're living in and the education that we need to provide. Our community supported us again with a huge levy. That's not by accident. That's because of a commitment to public education. And that is a powerful thing for a community to have, and it doesn't happen accidentally. It happens because of the leadership that the district provides. Superintendent News brought in some amazing principals and leadership into this district. He has challenged all of us. We've had some good arguments, and arguments are good, because we've had to think about what we really want for our kids and from our kids as they prepare for the world that they're going to live in. There were easier ways to do this job, Rob. I'm sure you could have sat back and taken the traditional route and we still would have been moving along. But you chose to challenge us, and we appreciate that. And I wish the best for Oklahoma City, because it's coming their way. And I think that's exciting. So while we are really sad that you're leaving, you've been great to work with. We hope the next challenge will provide you with opportunities to grow education in this country even more powerfully than you have here in Federal Way. And we have benefited, and we really appreciate that. And we have a couple of thank yous. First, so you won't forget us, here is Federal Way.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And second, something for your desk,
Shall I open it now?
if you'd like.
It looks difficult.
No, it's not.
To open. Yes, it is.
We can help you.
This is where I need my kids.
Yes.
They're really good at it. I love the wrapping paper, by the way. Excellent choice. Oh, beautiful. It's a little placard that will stay on the desk. Thank you for your leadership, Robert Arnew, Superintendent, 2010-2014, the Federal Way Public School Board of Directors. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to ask the rest of the board to make their comments. Claire, would you like to start?
Sure. I just have three short things I'd like to share related to leadership and success, and want to thank you in advance. I guess first I want to say the three things that stand out in my mind are family engagement, early learning, and full-day kindergarten. And all of those three things are really the ultimate change agents in our community, and a way that we're going to make a difference on the outcomes for kids and for families, and why we can't forget our children who are currently in our system by caring for them as they enter our doors. we're setting people up for access and opportunity, which is what equals success. So I want to thank you for a professional and personal relationship the last few years and the work we've been able to do together. And there are 3 things I want to share. One is the art of leadership is saying no, not saying yes. It's very easy to say yes. Effective leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Leadership is defined by results, not attributes. That's Peter Drucker. And you don't lead by pointing and telling people some place to go. You lead by going to that place and making a case. Thank you for everything you've done.
Jeffrey?
So although it's been a short time, it's been a whirlwind for sure, right, in the time that we've been here. But the work that you've done over the last years, I'm learning more and more about it. And it is evident that it will carry us through the coming years with a lot of impact and a lot of undertow that will be there from what you've created and the groundwork that you've laid. So I'm excited to see that and where it goes. And I appreciate all your efforts. I reiterate what Claire says, that it's hard to say no. And there's times that we've had to say no, that the community hasn't always agreed, but it puts us where we're at today to move forward in the direction we need to. So thank you for your time and good luck in OKC.
Just the kind of imagery I've been thinking about lately of there just seems sometimes Federal Way, it's one of those communities where I think a lot of times people find it a lot easier to kind of sit back and throw rocks and just kind of what they see and they don't like. And then there's people in our community that take rocks and they pick them up and they bring them to somewhere and they build something with it. And those people, might still just throw their rocks and those kinds of things. And I look at Superintendent New as somebody that's come to our community. He didn't throw rocks. He saw issues. He saw problems. He saw things that the board was asking him to do, huge, huge tasks. And he said, okay, I'm going to build. And he took those rocks and built, and he brought other people alongside to help build what we're seeing today. And a lot of times I think people can look at, actually a former board member once said to me, schools don't create society's problems, we inherit them. And that's really where that group of in our city that's dealing with those issues, we're wrestling with them, and how do we deal with this? And we know that Federal Way has seen so many changes, not just in the schools, but in our community in the last decade, 2 decades. And Superintendent New is somebody that came into this community. It wasn't perfect. There was a lot of problems, a lot of issues, and he took them head on. And he's not somebody to just manage or just try to kind of subdue it. He did it with leadership, with courage. And like anything with schools, changes don't necessarily happen overnight, or the things that are begun, you don't necessarily always see the fruit of or the results of for years to come. And I think that's the case with Federal Way. Even though, you always have your bumps and your changes and stuff, there's going to be a lasting legacy because of what Superintendent New has invested into our school district. His fingerprints are on so many different things. And maybe not right this moment, but I know in years to come, we're going to see the fingerprints of his courage, of his hard work, of his leadership, of his wisdom, of his strength, of his vision, and of his insight. We're going to just see those different things. And maybe no one will ever pinpoint it and say, oh, that was what he did, because obviously it's a group of people that put that together. But he definitely will have his fingerprints in on that, as many in this room will have that too, as we've worked together to try to make Federal Way a better place. If we poured into our students, if we poured into families, our teachers, and we're trying to do the best for all those around, you have played that role, and we thank you. And I think that at a local level and also at a national level, people are seeing that, some of the great things going on in Federal Way. And as so hard as it's seeing him to go to Oklahoma City, we know that they're going to be getting a great thing. And I can't wait to see, with the opportunities that he has down there, the great things that we're going to see coming out of Oklahoma City in a few years. And they're just going to sit there and go, wow, look at the changes and the transformation and the things that are happening there. And we'll have been a part of that. So Superintendent, congratulations, and thank you for your service here at Federal Way.
And now, even though those of you at home aren't going to benefit from this, we are going to party a little, and we have a cake in the back, and we'd like to recess the meeting. Now we will reconvene in about 10 minutes to continue with the board meeting. Okay, if we could have the board members forward, we will reconvene. I said it plural, so it wouldn't look like one. Okay, we are reconvening, and I would first like to go to superintendent comments, and Superintendent Sally McLean.
Good evening. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to serve you for today through June 30th of 2015. I wanted to share with you some of the activities that I've had an opportunity to participate in our community and at our schools over the last couple of weeks. On May 16th, Board President Carol Gregory and I were at the Communities in Schools breakfast, and we were pleased to be there and have the opportunity to introduce some of our great students who have been mentees through Communities in Schools. Communities in Schools had a goal of raising $50,000 that morning, and they succeeded their goal. And we are pleased to see that partnership continue to be a strong support to some of our students. Later in the budget presentation, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services will talk a little bit about expanding that partnership. On Saturday, May 17th, one of our partnerships in our community is with Advancing Leadership Youth, but the adults Advancing Leadership hosted a day of organics and gardening at the Truman Garden, or the Career Academy site. I wanted to recognize the 5 employees that we currently have participating in Advancing Leadership, and in alphabetical order. They are Leslie Deacons, who is a TOSA supporting our career and technical education, Kathy Ristine, one of our Prof Tech specialists in assessment, Karen Saunders in our Community Relations Department, who's here this evening, Doug Shore out of the Transportation Department, one of our mechanics, and Sean Simpson with Teaching for Learning. And again, these 5 individuals have all been part of Advancing Leadership this year and have been helping support the Community Garden Foundation by developing operating plans, volunteer distribution, education, and marketing plans for our community gardens. Last Friday, Director Claire Wilson, Board President Carol Gregory, and Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson and I had an opportunity to be at the Wassa 110 Community Luncheon Recognition, where we had the opportunity to recognize outgoing Senator Tracy Eide for her contributions to K-12 education during her career. And I know at the end of her tenure, we will bring her back in front of the board to do a formal recognition at that point in time. We also received notice that AVID, which is advancement by way of individual determination, and we have the AVID program in all of our secondary schools, that Totem Middle School, which has been an AVID national demonstration school, was recognized again as an AVID national demonstration school. It is one of the few sites in the country that received that sort of recognition, so we are pleased by that. And I had, if you'll forgive me, because there probably is a way to run PowerPoints from up here, but since this is National Art Month, and the board did pass a proclamation in honor of National Art for the month of May, I wanted to share with you a couple of pieces of artwork that are significant in our student community right now, and I will excuse myself to the podium. So on May 10th, TJ unveiled this art mural called the International Market. And the International Market was spearheaded by a parent of ours, Michelle Tahiri, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, who has worked for over 2 years with a group of students to create this mural. And the mural honors the school's rich diversity, with the students incorporating the 8 major cultures of the student community around the outside petals, and then taking the inner petals and recognizing the Native American, the Pacific Northwest Native American. So again, this has been an ongoing project with many different students, and I thought it was appropriate to recognize that work this evening. The other piece of artwork was a dedication. When we build new buildings with state match funds or school construction assistance funds, we have the opportunity to work with the state's Arts Commission, which employs an individual to design a piece of art for the school. At Sunnycrest, this new art sculpture, River Reeds, was unveiled, and we're pleased to have that as part of the Sunnycrest community. And for those of you who happen to have been across the street in the Educational Service Center, while I don't have a picture of this, you will notice that the TJ CTE Visual Arts has again created a set of silk screens that are now in display in the superintendent's office. So pleased to share those pieces of art with you and this evening. And one last piece of information, I want to remind our viewers that the progress report is in the mail. And this is always a nice compilation of touching on a variety of aspects of the school district. So look for that in your mailbox. And that concludes my comments this evening.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to public comments. And I have one blue sheet. Is there anyone else? If anyone else would like to comment, you need to fill out one of these blue sheets that are back on the table. Okay, Tanea Lanning.
Good evening. Thank you so much for this time. I wanted to come to you representing our local unit PTA at Valhalla Elementary School to just give the board a little update about the good works that have been going on over this year at the school. We tied our PTA meetings to the Family Access Nights this year, and it has been wildly successful at increasing engagement, not only in PTA, but in the Family Access Nights. The two things partner really well together. One of the other things that we've helped to support is the Multicultural Night at our school, and what a case study in the benefit of the family liaison in the elementary environment. Elizabeth Bagnell, I cannot say enough good things about her and what she has done for our community in partnership with James Crawford and Monty Potter, who does our music and theater productions. They did an outstanding job of creating an event that brought our entire community together and showcased the rich and wonderful diversity that we have at Valhalla. And it was absolutely amazing. Standing room only. The kids were just utterly excited. My own daughter, that is almost 8, made a whole presentation on Germany, got dressed up, and it was all completely her idea, completely done, had a little demonstration board. It was really heartwarming. It was amazing. I also wanted to share with you that our PTA, through the course of this year, at this current time, has funded, through the generosity of our community, over $42,000 worth of support to Valhalla. And in that, we funded Xenomath, MobiMath, Accelerated Reader. Our book fairs have brought in over $10,000 of support for the library and the teachers and the students of Valhalla. We have, our major funding that was funded by the walkathon was the Safety Beacon project. We helped to partner on the installation of that in our school zone. And we have our carnival coming up on June 6th. So you're all invited. We would love to see you there. It will be a lot of fun. And I would just like to also say thank you for the support with the portables that will be coming next year. We really appreciate that. We have a great community at Valhalla, and we appreciate the board's support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we will then move to school board comments. Who would like to start? Mr. Macanello?
Sure. So we've,
Oh, one more, okay? Thank you. You can go up to the mic. Latricia Amaker?
Well, that's my mom's name, but my name is Jalen Green.
Okay.
So I go to Federal Way Public Academy, and I am in the 7th grade, and I went there in 6th grade too. And I noticed that it was really a challenge for me in 6th grade at Federal Way Public Academy. So I don't really want any other 6th grader to go through what I went through. So maybe a guidance counselor for FWAPA would really help there. And so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Okay, Mr. Macanello.
so we've completed 5 of our 7 board recognition nights. I've attended all 5 and will attend the last 2 this week. They really are a phenomenal time for us to take time to recognize our students, our parents, our staff, and volunteers. It's been very heartwarming, and it's been a great piece to be able to participate and share that with each one of the communities at each of the middle schools, and I really appreciated being involved in that. The work with the Grading Advisory Committee continues. We meet every month. We decided to meet again in June, so we took a vote last month and decided we would continue to meet. We're currently broken into individual segments. There's 5 main categories that we're looking at as we go through, and that will be work that continues through next year. That's the commitment of the committee. It is posted to the website. I am on the committee, and there are actually 40 others that are on the committee as well. So if you have any questions concerning anything about grading advisory, standard-based grading, any of that piece, feel free to let us know. Thank you.
I'll go. So Jalen, I want to thank you for your comments, and I know sometimes when you start a school, it's very difficult to know kind of what to do and where to go and who to talk to, and I think that coming to share that is really big. It's big because there are other students that will follow you, and because of what you said, will give us an opportunity to think about how we help students as they enter new environments and new schools. So I really want to thank both of you for taking the time to come tonight and share that. So thanks so much. I really do appreciate that. Also wanted to just share that I did have a chance to go to the Multicultural Night at Valhalla, and it was clearly a community event beyond what I had experienced before, and well over 15 different countries that were represented, not only in information that parents and students shared about their own cultures, but then theater, dance, and music that again was shared by community members, by families, entire families, and by students as well. So it was a testament to what community can look like. I also wanted to shout out to Riley Germanis, who was a student here in Federal Way, who recently, if you've been keeping track of the Education Lab, which is something that the Times paper has been doing, Riley was the first of 5 local college students last week to share at Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute the challenge that he overcame, the significant challenges he came in his own life to really be a successful student right now at Western Washington University. He's a 21-year-old senior, and really sharing for other students and other families the fact that resilience and access and opportunity are what it takes to be able to make a change, not only in your life, but in others' lives as well. So I really wanted to thank him for that. And then also notice that if you are a sports fan, that our spring all-arena, our all-area teams came out in the Seattle Times, and that Federal Way is represented in that as well. So I want to say we have great things happening in Federal Way. So I'm passing it on.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I had a privileged day of talking to a Federal Way School District veteran who's been in our district for 27 years, and it was a great half-hour conversation, just gleaning from her, just her experience, her perception, just how much she deeply cares, and you get that vibe all the time just from so many teachers, principals, parents, students that are in our district. They definitely care and love this school district, and it was definitely evident in that conversation. So I appreciate those conversations and thank those that came out tonight. Thank you.
A couple things. One, I have been quite involved in the last few weeks in the transition of superintendents, and I want to thank everyone that's been a part of that, and not only the two superintendents, but the staff, who I know it's a difficult time for when we make these kinds of transitions. And I want to commend Sally for coming in and taking over very quickly. And she's also still bargaining, and she's also still the interim assistant superintendent for, I think, I'm making up a title, for the budget process as well, which we're also going through. So she's had a huge load, but has done just an outstanding job, and we're very excited about that. And thanks to the cabinet for putting up with all of this for the last few weeks. I know you never know for sure who's in charge or where the right answer's coming from, but you're good at figuring out what those answers are anyway, so thank you. I also attended the board recognition events, and what an exciting time. And when I first thought about them, I thought, well, what will this really be like? But it is such a powerful event that if there's one going on at your school or in your school community, please make every effort to attend. It's well worth it. And finally, I wanted to mention that next week, June 3rd, we will be interviewing 5 candidates that we have selected who have applied for the board. We have not closed the process, in that if for any reason we decide that none of these 5 meet the criteria, we still have other candidates that that applied. We had a total of 12, and the ones that we will be interviewing next on June 3rd will be Jeremy Kuko, Hiroshi Ito, Shelley Koh, Tanea Lanning, and Richard Champion. So we look forward to that, and hope that you find this to be something that you'd like to hear, and if so, please attend our study session next week. With that, let's move on to the superintendent's budget recommendations.
Good evening, President Gregory, members of the board, staff, parents, students, and community. It's my honor to present to you the preliminary budget recommendation for the general fund, the 2014-15 general fund. number of slides to get through this evening. I know we had a work study last Thursday where we spent quite a bit of time going into detail over each of these comments. I had an opportunity to share this presentation with the All Administrators Group a little bit earlier this afternoon, and I'm telling you right now that it will probably take about a half an hour to get through this, but I'll march through it. When we first started talking about the 2014-15 budget and the budget priorities, we knew there were some things that needed to be addressed as we prepared that recommendation. We know we have new and continuing state and federal mandates that we need to prepare for. And this list by no means is intended to be complete. For example, the concept of smarter balance is not listed on this list. But we know we're working with the second year of the Teacher Principal Evaluation Program with Common Core State Standards. We know that the legislature has passed new requirements for graduation that don't start in 14-15, but that we need to start planning for. We're certainly dealing with the impacts of the being back under No Child Left Behind and continue to have federal sequestration to tangle with. In addition to that, we wanted to be strategic about on-time graduation support strategies. As you know, we have an annual target goal of growth that's just about 2% a year to bring us in line with the roadmap region and their graduation strategies. We are looking to continue to expand on our parent and community engagement. We talked about the fact that we need to make some strategic investments in MSOC, materials, supplies, and operating costs. Have some budget priorities around student extracurricular activities, and are looking to sustain or reinstate our ability to have market competitive compensation packages. This presentation tonight is framed around those particular priorities, calling out certain things either packaged in ends or around specific items. The No Child Left Behind waiver is probably the first thing to talk about. The legislature did not adopt the Federal Department of Education's required teacher evaluation methodologies. By not adopting the Department of Ed's requirements, we know that we are back under the sanctions of No Child Left Behind and adequate yearly progress. No Child Left Behind has a series of what I call progressive discipline for failure to make improvement in each of what used to be 37 different cells of measurement, which has now been expanded when we weren't looking to 43 cells. So if you fail to make adequate yearly progress in any one of those 43 cells, you start to move through a set of progressive disciplines. Part of this requires us to set aside 20% of our Title I funding, which for our school district is $1 million. And of course, we won't actually know which of our schools will be in which set of NCLB sanctions until after the MSP and HISP results are released, and the continuing negotiations between the Department of Ed and OSPI play out when you figure it's been 2 years since we've been measured under AYP. We also know that there is some potential loss of our Race to the Top funding, which we were celebrating in Superintendent New's tenure here with the 7 districts and the $40 million. Again, that Race to the Top funding requires the district to make a commitment to implement teacher evaluation as defined by the Department of Ed. One of the biggest pieces of supports we can provide our schools as you look at changing enrollments is to increase staff to meet those changing enrollment needs. So when we talk about budget-to-budget changes on a headcount basis, our enrollment is up in 3 significant categories: basic education, special education, and our English language learner population. On a budget-to-budget basis, basic education is up about 284 students, special education is up slightly by 50, and our English language learner population is up 400 students, or over 15%. Obviously, when you have enrollment increases, as I mentioned, you have a need for more classroom teachers and paraeducators. And I think the important piece for us to recognize here in this recommendation is that we're recommending the entire revenue generation is being placed in terms of support for teachers and paraeducators. Looking at strategic investments in materials, supplies, and operating costs, otherwise known as MSOC, we know the Washington State Legislature increased our funding from $737 to $848. OSPI estimates that to be $2.2 million. We've talked a lot about making these this increase be a strategic investment in curriculum and instructional materials, student technology, and building maintenance. Currently, where we are in the overall budget balancing, we are allocating an additional $500,000 to Teaching for Learning to support our teachers with curriculum resources related to the Common Core implementation and Next Gen Science standards. Please be aware that many of the providers of curriculum have not yet realigned their curriculum to comply with the National Common Core state standards. So this is not intended to be reflective of the entire need, but a large contribution towards helping provide teachers with the resources they need. Student technology, I mentioned briefly that Smarter Balance will be the new student assessment that is administered in all 295 school districts in the state in Washington next year. It will replace the MSP and the HISP, which replaced the WASL. Smarter Balance is administered in an online environment in order to and you have basically a 12-week window to administer the tests. But if you think about the fact that a school year is only 36 weeks long, to start testing students on mastery in a content unit when they're only 2/3 of the way through the year, which is mathematically what you would have to do if we didn't increase the number of devices we have, that doesn't really make sense for any student in the state. So we are making some strategic investments in student technology to double the number of devices that we're purchasing. So we have the tech levy, which our voters have supported, that provides a certain number of devices, basically one device for every 8 students. And then we are supplementing that with general fund resources through this MSOC allocation with a hoped for goal of something closer to 4-to-1 by the time our students are required to start taking this Smarter Balance assessment. Building maintenance has been an area that has operated on a shoestring, and that shoestring we just replaced the shoestring a little bit, but thanks to the Director of Support Services, Cindy Wendland, and her staff, they have developed a maintenance plan to replace boilers on a regular basis, to address carpet needs, and to begin addressing painting needs in the district. We know we still have a large category of need in regards to the infrastructure of our buildings related to roofing that we will still be looking to address in future years. Musical instruments, many of our band and orchestra programs are students who play the large cellos or tubas or drum sets, don't necessarily have those instruments at home for themselves. And so we like to have a supply of instruments that students can borrow from the school district while they participate in those activities. Our program specialists that have managed our music instruments and our teachers in those programs are very creative at maintaining a very aged inventory of musical instruments, and are looking forward to being able to provide our students with new instruments. We have $650,000 currently out of this 2.2 set aside to cover other inflationary costs. Typically, utilities always go up. Fuel, we know, is going up again. And then we have school operating budgets that we like to increase consistent with either the cost of living or whatever we believe we can afford within the $650,000 to give our principals and our buildings a little more flexibility to address the needs of their students. Moving into the ends and our 4 ends, our first global end is related to graduation, looking at providing $500,000 in 2 areas. One is targeted credit retrieval support in our high schools by expanding our guidance and support specialist. Currently, we have 1 guidance and support specialist in each high school beyond the counseling staff. We would like to add 1 more, again, who would be working specifically with students who are showing up on our early warning indicator system as being potentially not on track for graduating on time. We also want to be very deliberate about working with our high schools to ensure that they know it before the start of the year that they will have some funds available to them to either support in-school credit retrieval, after-school credit retrieval, or Saturday school support for students who need that additional support. In addition to that, as I had the opportunity to work with Superintendent New and the leadership team, one of the things we started thinking about is the fact that many of our career and college activities are distributed. When you have a fairly lean organization, they're distributed in a variety of places. So for example, we have had AVID as part of the Director of Equity and Achievement's job. We have 14-18 programs, which are our dropout retrieval programs that Vince and I and Mark have all been attempting to address as we can, kind of shoehorn them into the schedule. Obviously, we've talked about credit retrieval, but having someone assist our guidance and support specialists in our schools and making sure we're addressing students who need that kind of work could be helpful for us. And then we have the College Bound Scholarships, which is something that's been housed in our Community Relations Department, along with a host of other career and college activities that if they're consolidated and under one umbrella, we would hope that we would gain some operational efficiency and effectiveness. Moving to ends 2, which is student achievement, we're looking at about $1 million of additional strategies to support our student achievement goals. Summer school, as you will recall, most of our summer school was funded through I-728 funds, which were eliminated and are still gone, although we're seeing some of that funding come back through in a learning assistance program or LAP funding. So we are ensuring some continuity for Fred and Summer Bridge by specifically budgeting for those activities. We had the opportunity to increase our AmeriCorps membership by 10. With AVID, AVID has a new program called Excel, which helps schools with large populations of English language learners continue to embed those strategies. We're looking at reinstating middle school interventionists. Again, that was something that was partially unplugged as we went through the Great Recession. We want to make sure our middle schools have the same supports as our high schools to help target students who need program supports in middle schools. As was mentioned when we were recognizing Superintendent Rob New, the middle years program is in year 2 at Illahee, Sequoia, and Todd Beamer. That year 2 expansion is predominantly focused on world languages and expanding access to world languages in those schools. And then we're looking at creating a director of advanced programs to, again, that work has been led largely through Teaching for Learning in the Assessment Department, which supports Cambridge International Baccalaureate and advanced placement programs along with all of the College Board testing. But we've had a new requirement provided by the Washington State legislators in regards to supporting our highly capable students, and that has had a more significant impact in the system, and we feel like we need to consolidate those again under the direction of a single leader to help provide continuity. And I know I'm not forgetting preschool, but highly capable through K-12. ENDS 3 talks about student responsibility. We're talking about targeting about $800,000 to assist with student responsibility. We have one one program specialist who helps support our schools in learning different strategies for responding with different kinds of student behaviors. If you imagine one person for 37 schools, 22,000 students, that person's been stretched. We're talking about doubling that by adding one more. So we will have 2 people who are skilled in responding to emerging or current issues at different buildings. Consistently through staffing, we heard from our elementary schools that many of the inappropriate behaviors or poor student choices were occurring in the lunchroom or during recess on the playground, and some of that they believed was due to the lack of the sheer number of adults we had present to work with large groups of students. So we are increasing lunchroom and recess supervision at about 2/3 of our elementary schools. And then I know you all had a work study on PBIS and looking at a significant support for PBIS and behavior support. While this has been an organic growth, we're looking for ways to capitalize on that organic growth and continue to spread that throughout our schools. The last ENDS and 4 is related to parent engagement. Again, looking at about $800,000 in parent engagement, expanding family liaisons from 8 to 16. And again, the vision for family liaisons is that we have one in every elementary and K-8 school that would then work with families coming from preschool and work with families going to middle school. The plan that we had in place about 5 years ago would have had us at 17 family liaisons next year, so we've been able to come very close to that plan, even though we had to suspend our expansion due to the Great Recession. We are talking about expanding our school outreach coordinators from the current 2 to 7. This is one of those community partnerships with communities and schools that I was talking about earlier. This would provide school outreach coordinators at each of the 7 comprehensive middle schools. And then we are also talking about a more strategic response to our district-wide interpreter supports. Implementing McCleary. Why are we even able to do any of this? We have more resources from the Washington State Legislature, which is the second year we've been able to say that, because of the Washington State Supreme Court decision that is commonly referred to as McCleary, that declared that the state was failing to meet its constitutional obligation to make ample provision for the education of all students in the state. The legislature has several more years to continue implementing McCleary, and the guiding principles that are in place at this point in time talk about providing relief to taxpayers and parents. If the state begins paying more money for education, that means the burden on our local taxpayers should fall, or the burden on our parents to pay for fees for a variety of things should also fall. We've talked about moving towards market midpoint compensation, and of course, the sort of reins on the spending or the reins on the budget recommendations are always around the fact that any and all restorations and enhancements must be affordable and sustainable. We don't want to find ourselves in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 coming back and having to undo the good work that we've been able to implement so far. So looking at those 3 principles, the preliminary recommendation would recommend to you that the 2015 EP&O levy will remain at the current level, which represents the 4th consecutive year of no tax rate increase through the EP&O, and that we would eliminate pay for play, which is also known as athletic participation fees. We implemented athletic participation fees in the 2003-2004 budget cuts, and we're now recommending that 11 years later, we believe we have the ability to unplug those. Moving towards market midpoint, we know we're going to spend about $1.5 million on that for the contracts that are currently settled. I just want to remind all of us that for the 6th consecutive year, no COLA or any other type of salary allocation increase was granted for K-12 employees by the Washington State Legislature. They are the primary drivers of salary increases, so we are making some assumptions that the legislature will begin to step up and change the salary allocations in the next biennium. And we have certainly resumed market midpoint implementations in our conversations with our various groups. And there's that assumption, sorry. But we're assuming that they're going to address compensation in the next biennium. Restorations and enhancements, we made some fairly significant reductions in the Community Relations Department and Human Resources. Cindy Black had formerly served as the point person for the implementation not only of the Teacher Principal Evaluation Program, TPEP, but for supporting principals and teachers who were on plans of improvement. She graciously agreed to continue to do that work while she also assumed the responsibility for all 23 elementaries and 2 K-8s. That was functional for a year, but it is not really sustainable over the long term. Our Community Relations Department also took a 20% reduction in staffing for this year. I think that I would like to give a shout out to Deborah Stenberg and Karen Saunders for the work that they have done over this last year. But again, the common theme that I have heard from many people is that we need to find ways to support the efforts of communicating with not just our broader community, but with our students and parents. So we are recommending, while this says restore reductions, there may be some reorganization that occurs as we look at restoring those positions. The Internet Academy, the oldest online academy in the state of Washington, has been, was Ron Mayberry's sole responsibility for a number of years, but for the last 4 or 5 years, he has carried at least 2 hats, one by being the principal of the Career Academy and IA, and now being the executive director of technology and IA. As we look at our growth in the Internet Academy, both in terms of students served and staff that are serving those students, and the impacts of TPEP, and our need for continued focus on instructional technology, it does not make sense for us to continue to have a Ron divided in those 2 ways. Although I know he will continue to be integral to our successful implementation of blended learning. We are talking about the concept of restoring a student placement position. This is more generically someone who would take over the responsibilities for choice enrollment, potentially help with some of the district-wide interpreter needs, and work with F1 visa students. I don't expect that this position is going to, it needs a job description. We need an organizational structure around this. I don't think it's going to be ready to roll in September, but it's certainly an area of need for us. We again have new state reporting requirements related to choice students that require us to basically do dual data entry. We are asking to add a position, or recommending that we add a position to the IT help desk, which would increase the number of people who can respond to staff who need help from 2 to 3. Since I think I take up 50% of their time, they would appreciate a 3rd person there. The Support Service Center is asking to increase the number of painters we have for the district from 1 to 2. This goes hand in hand with that desire to provide some routine painting, or what is referred to as the envelope, some routine upgrading of the envelope of our buildings. Currently, our painter is pretty much dedicated to removing graffiti. And as we look at supporting Common Core within the Teaching for Learning department, we have 2 great teachers on special assignment supporting math, and only 1 supporting English language arts, so we would like to add the 2nd to support English language arts. We have had no elementary assistant principals in our elementary schools, so the recommendation would add elementary assistant principals, moving us from 0 to 8, or roughly a third of our largest elementary schools would be given elementary assistant principals next year. We have already proceeded with implementing JV boys soccer and C-team girls volleyball next year. And then we would talk about maintaining our beginning teacher mentor supports. Typically when we have a grant that supports something, when the grant goes away, the work goes away, but we feel like maintaining new teachers in their first 2 years of work with us is so important. We invest so much time and money in our staff, and we want them to be successful and stay with us, that we believe this is an important thing for us to continue to support. Last slide, timelines. Obviously tonight is May 27th. We're rolling out the superintendent's budget recommendation. I would like to give thanks to the leadership team and the board and former Superintendent New for all their help and collaboration in creating this recommendation. The first public hearing is still scheduled for June 10th. June 10th will be that public hearing where we do a bit of a recap on general fund, but we'll primarily focus on the 4 other funds the board is responsible for adopting a budget for. And while we've had the second public hearing and adoption typically scheduled for 2 weeks after that on June 24th, we do have some constraints in the business office that are making it unlikely that we will be prepared to give you or to proceed with that second public hearing and adoption on the 24th. I will let you know on the 10th, if not before, what we're feeling is a more reasonable date for us to present a complete budget to you. And just to reassure you that final adoption is not required until August 31st. We don't want to drag it on till August 31st, but we do need a bit of time given some constraints that we're faced with right now. Are there any questions this evening or comments from the board?
No, I think the detail, the things that we're looking to enhance and modify, it's great insight, and I'm looking forward. Hopefully we'll be able to make all those things happen, because I think it'll bring a lot to our school. So thank you for your team's diligence to this process. Every year it's awesome, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, let's move on to Chet Christensen and the issuance of contracts to certificated teachers.
Right, members of the board and Superintendent McLean and Deputy Superintendent Davidson, it's my pleasure this evening to ask the board for the consideration of the rehire of our teaching staff. This is the time of the year when we come annually and make a request in that regard, and it's been my experience that most staff like to know if they're going to have a job before they leave for the summer, and so that's why we do the timing at this time of the year. And we just heard on the budget presentation that we have enough funds to rehire our staff. So I believe you have a motion in front of you for giving administration the authority to issue contracts to our certificated staff.
Jeffrey?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the issuance of contracts to all certificated teachers except those who have retired, resigned, or have been recommended for non-renewal for the 2014-15 school year effective July 1st, 2014.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We now have a teaching corps again.
Right, yes, thank you. Well, similarly, yeah, we do like having those folks very much. At any rate, we have a similar request as it relates to our administrative staff. And again, the motion or the request is the same. We're asking for the authority to issue contracts to our certificated and classified administrators and our exempt staff.
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the issuance of contracts to all certificated administrators, classified administrators, and exempt staff except those who have retired, resigned, or have been recommended for non-renewal for the 2014-15 school year effective July 1, 2014.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no.
Well, on
Motion
behalf
carries.
of all of our staff, thank you very much. I know they're very appreciative of this action.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have 2 additional motions. Mr. McAnalloy.
So the first thing we need to review are the questions for the 5 candidates for next week. It was pulled together from the 2008, and we just need to discuss those and get them approved.
Yes, we put them on the agenda, didn't we?
We did. Get
Right.
under the agenda as item number 17.
Um,
Do we have,
Are there,
we need to discuss before we make a motion?
yeah, are there any, we have 9 questions in front of us that we will be sending out to the applicants. And we need to decide if these are the ones that we want. And I put a list together, and that's what we're looking at. But they need to be approved before I can send them.
I would, Madam President, I would combine question 2 and 3. Oh, excuse me, question 1 and 2,
Okay.
which would bring us down to 8 questions.
Sounds-
And I think the other conversation was to allow folks to respond to these in writing, and at the June 3rd interviews to be able to kind of choose for themselves whether they'd rather to leave the board with written documentation or whether they just want to share their answers verbally and not make it a requirement to do both the interview process and written response to questions.
Just refresh my memory, how long are we going to give per candidate to give responses?
Our plan was 20 minutes
Per candidate?
per candidate,
Okay.
which is going to be tight.
Okay. So is the board envisioning that all 8 questions will be asked of each candidate in that 20-minute period, or is there a way that we're going to kind of limit that? There's no bad questions, and I think they're actually very good questions here, obviously. That's just my one concern, is that we don't, obviously different people have different, some people like to say things short and concise, other people kind of like to elaborate. I think giving the questions obviously in advance will help some people kind of whittle down what they want to say. Yeah, I guess my concern is that it would just go on, and I think if it does, we'll lose productivity in that meeting, because we need to be able to get those answers, concisely, so we're able to consider all 5.
I
And
guess
that-
Just a thought.
The intention was that by giving out the questions, people could be prepared.
Perfect.
And wouldn't have to think on their feet, and that should help facilitate it. If we find that it doesn't, then we may have to come up with something new quickly.
And I think if we have, for example, 8 questions, you think about 2 minutes per question, that's 16 minutes, which gives 4 minutes. So I mean, you think about it, it sounds pretty structured, but 60 seconds for a response for most of these questions would give us a pretty good idea of kind of from where one might come. And we might also have question number 10 or 8 or 9, whatever it is, which might be any follow-up to responses that we didn't get a chance to do.
Okay, is there a motion?
Madam President, I motion that we accept the now 8 questions with a 20-minute limit per candidate for the interview process of the 5 applicants.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I would add the opportunity to either respond in writing and or verbally as part of our process.
But not a requirement on the writing, right?
Correct.
It's only they choose.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. So to clarify that, each candidate will be asked
Just
to
a
come
point of order
forward.
is, do we need to make a motion on that?
Oh,
To amend the
amendment?
original
Yeah,
motion
yeah.
to include the To
Okay,
include the.
Let's move to amend.
Okay. I'd like
Okay.
to move to amend the motion as it was originally stated to include both an option for written document to be included with the opportunity for the public interview session. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
I'll second.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Moved and
Director
seconded
Peterson.
to amend the motion to include the opportunity for candidates to both write answers and present that in writing to the board and answer the question publicly. It's not required, but that opportunity will be there under this amendment.
Is that going to be prior to the meeting? Do they have that option? Where are they going to send it to Chris? What is the option?
No,
around
it
that?
would be presented to the board that evening.
Perfect.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion to amend, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now let's go to the main motion as amended. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Is that easier, Chris? Yeah.
I have the opportunity to watch it later.
Okay. Okay, so
18,
we are now
schedule,
Calendar.
calendar, yeah.
doing a change in the calendar. Mr. McAnally?
So, Madam President, based on the interviews now taking place on June 3rd, we need to move our ends for from a work study on June 3rd to June 17th. So I motion that we move that to the 17th with consent on July 22nd and approval at our August board meeting on ends 4.
Discussion, is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
So we're adding a fourth meeting to the month. So we'll have one every single Tuesday of the month for June, is what this will add. So great. Just allowing everybody to kind of add that up. So it's a full month. So
Just slip it in.
just in case you had nothing to do on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Now you do.
Any
It was
further
better.
dis-
But it was better than the 3 Saturdays in June, right? So that was the compromise.
Well, strong work.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those no. Motion carries. Okay, is there anything further to come before the board? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you for coming.
This is one of the few nights I come to the meeting